So how's your day been? Trying to get my chicken house, my chicken fort. I mean, the amount of time and the amount of lumber I'm putting into this new chicken house after 5 years here on the homestead. I mean, I could move in here. Anyway, so I've been listening to Lieutenant Colonel Steven Murray's, One Team, One Fight podcast. And I really, really relate to what he's talking about. The reason I relate is because of my own family history from the American Revolution and also my personal history in dealing with commies. Observing what they did in Vietnam, experiencing what they do in prisons in Vietnam, and then the horrific stuff that they did in Central America and Latin America. And once they solidify here in the United States, what they're going to do here. When I say solidify, they've actually already taken over the country. And if you don't understand that, then you don't know what happened in 2009 when Obama took over. Because Obama is a red diaper baby. And Kamala is the female version. So when they place her, and they're going to place her, you're going to see stuff that you may have read about happen in Cambodia in the 70s. Which I find ironic because the first movie I ever acted in was as an extra in the killing fields with Hang Nor and Sam Waterston was the lead playing, what was that dick's name? He was an arrogant asshole. Everybody that I knew who knew him. It was SCH something. I'm not going to say Schaffelberger. Schaffelberger was the Lieutenant Commander, Navy SEAL who got assassinated in El Salvador when I was in Bangkok, just about to sneak into Vietnam, which I'm going to read about to you which might have been a unique and interesting experience for an American to experience post-1975 in Vietnam. It's going to be an indication of what a lot of Americans are going to have the opportunity to experience in this country once they solidify everything that they're doing. So, solidifying, what are they doing? I'll give you an example. So they've got the strike going on the East Coast. If you know the history of workers' unions, and especially the longshoremen, you realize that the longshoremen's union is heavily rife with communists. It's been since the 20s. Basically, once the Bolsheviks started taking over in Russia, and unions are tied to unions, and the Bolsheviks, that's how they stayed in power. They would pay off the Teamsters, the union leaders, to have all their members vote Bolshevik, and that's how they stayed in power. And that's what they're going to do in this country. And what they're doing right now is you got the longshoremen strike, and what's going to happen is that Kamala's going to come in, they're going to have a negotiation, and she's going to save the day. It's all play acting, remember? All communists do is they play act. And they play act, and they lie until they solidify and completely have complete control of a nation. And once they do that, then they become Maoist. Then they become Pol Pot. Then they become Stalin. And they start rounding up people and sending them to the gulags or the killing fields. And then you start seeing atrocities that you never thought you could imagine happening. We've already seen through COVID that it's already happened. So, for those of you, and that's why I'm going to qualify that by the time I got to Central America, and I'll talk about that work because that's stuff I'm writing about in my book that's coming out. By the time I got to Central America, I had an order with my team that I would not be taken prisoner. And the reason I was not going to be taken prisoner again was because of what I experienced in prison in Vietnam. Because I knew how communists work. But in Central America, it was even worse. because we already knew what happened to Americans fighting alongside the Salvadorans who were captured. There was a going order with the FMLN that if they caught helicopter pilots or American advisors, they were to be executed immediately. That was going. And the manner in which they did that, and it wasn't advisors, it was basically mercenaries. That's what they called everybody, mercenaries. So you just didn't get taken prisoner. And listening to Murray's podcast and his statements about when they actually initiate martial law, whether it's for our good, for instance, locking people down again for our health and for our safety. These are all call words. These are words that actually should send shivers up your back. Because when a government starts doing something for your safety, it's everything but your safety. Like, let us disarm you for your safety. We'll take care of your protection. Well, how's that protection working in places like Detroit, Chicago, New York, while they bring in invaders to basically assault, rape, steal, kill, murder? These are operators. They know how to do this. They create chaos. It's about creating chaos. So the more people, the sheeple, the lemmings, freak out and believe that the government is on their side, the more that they'll be willing to acquiesce all their power over to the government. And they're doing a damn good job. You watch all this stuff and people say, oh, we got to stop this. And we got to it's for the safety of the people. Got to disarm everybody for the safety of the people. Everybody's got to get vaxxed for the safety of the people. It just goes on and on and on. So when they finally cinch up the game bag with all of us in there, well, by that time I probably won't be around because I've already gone through this shit. But I'm gonna read about this shit for you, because this is how it's gonna go if for instance you get picked up by, back in Vietnam it was the Internal Affairs, Department of Internal Affairs were the guys that captured us. But here's what an interrogation will go like for you, because this is what mine was like. And this is from my 2004 bestseller. You should get a copy. Read the whole thing. It'll tell you what it was like to live in Vietnam during the war, first memories of life being in the Tet Offensive. At the end, in the epilogue, I talk a little bit about my experiences in combat in Central America, what it was like to deal with the fucking communists in Central America and Latin America, and what you're going to be dealing with pretty soon. Because, man, I look at Kamala and it freaking blows me away. It's like her identity, it's the same exact thing they did with Obama. When Obama came in, my first question was like, who the hell is this person? Who in the hell is this person? And so I quickly started getting my intel and talking all my assets and everything, and man, it just freaking floored me. I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, they're doing it. So all of us who fought communism throughout the 80s and before, and won, and thought it was over, it just reinforced to me that, like during the GWAT, I would just tell people, said, here, listen to this. Islam is a political front. Communism is a religion. And if you look at it from that point of view, you'll see how the communists and the militant Islamists have worked so well together for the last 20 years. Somebody's taking some fires over the other side. I'll let them stop shooting. Kind of puts me at ease, because I know that when they cross Lexington Bridge, I won't be alone. So, the communists lost in Central America, Latin America, Africa, Asia. They lost, except for Vietnam, where they cinched everything up, and then they flipped. It's kind of they lost in Russia. So that was the Soviet-type communist. But the Is that one of my chickens? Whoa, they have some weird sounds. So we beat them because they collapsed under their weight, but they also collapsed because of the amount of work we had done to combat them and to win that freaking war. And that was a war that started all the way back when Woodrow Wilson sent the Polar Bear Brigade to Archangelisk to join forces with the Brits and with the White Russians against the Bolsheviks. And that was the beginning of the conflict between the Soviets, the Bolsheviks, and the United States. And people said, oh, well, we were okay with it. No, we weren't. They were always working. They look at the long game, just like the Chinese look at the long game. So you got the Maoist-type communist, and you got the old Lenin Soviet-style communist, which is no longer in Russia anymore. It's not. Russia is a totally different, it's a czarist, it's a dictatorship, but it's not communist. We're communist. We've been taken over. It's just like that old Beatles song. Back in the USSR, back in the US, back in the US, back in the USSR. It's come to fruition. And they did it by putting away the Che Guevara t-shirts, shaving, cutting their hair, and putting on suits and ties. And they've gotten in. They got into the Democrat Party. They took it over. And if you don't believe me, go listen to frickin' Bobby Kennedy Jr. He's got it. He understands. They've taken it over. It is not the Democrat Party. John F. Kennedy was still alive. He'd be frickin' rolling. He would be frickin'... He wouldn't... I don't know if he'd even be a Republican. He'd probably be a libertarian by now. Because the Republican Party is just a useless piece of crap. Both parties are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're not protecting the American people. And they're filling their pockets. And that's it. And we've gotten to the point of where you need to be looking at yourself. And that's what I like about listening to LTC Steven Murray's podcast. And you should go over there and listen to it. I've been listening to it frequently. I especially like the last one, which was with Joel Skousen. And the reason is because Joel Skousen's uncle wrote the book Naked Capitalist. And that was the book that when I read that, it opened my eyes to everything that had been happening in the world and in this country and been going on since the 1800s. And it's all been, it's been wild. But anyway, let me give you a hint of what it's going to be like when they solidify everything and they basically just cinch up everything. So you think you're an American, but you're not an American because you're basically just a slave communist. And there's going to be a one world order for us, the West. We'll see what happens to the Russians. That's the reason they're going after Putin, because Putin didn't want to be a part of it. He didn't want to be part of the WEF. The WEF and the communists, it's all this power struggle back and forth where they're working together. But you'll see, once one is gone, then another one comes in. It's kind of like, here we were allied with the Soviets against the Nazis, and then boom, suddenly the Soviets are back again, being our enemies again. But let's say you get picked up one night because you were on your way home and you didn't have your papers. So they take you in. This is how an interrogation might go for you. This is how my interrogations went for months. So, beginnings, chapter 1. Dickie Chappelle, my dear departed buddy Joe Galloway. That was one of his best friends in Vietnam was Dickie Chappelle. And that's actually the quote that I open with in the book, which is, quote, I guess it was bound to happen. Explanation caption, Dickie Chappelle, combat photojournalist, July 1965, as she lay dying from a severed carotid artery after stepping on a landmine. Chapter 1, beginnings. Ging Yang, Provincial Prison, Socialist Republic of Vietnam, July 1983. It is the second morning after a night of beatings, and the prison guards have been sloppy. Normally they use rubber hoses, but last night someone brought in a stick, and I think they dislocated a rib from my spine. It's hard to breathe. I fidget on my wooden stool, trying to find some salvation from the pain, but it hurts so damn much every time I take a deep breath. I try to distract myself by glancing at light coming in through the barred window, then at the high ceiling of this crumbling concrete leftover of French imperialism. A metal against metal clicking disrupts my scan and brings my attention to the guard, who grins suggestively as he fingers the bolt of his loaded AK-47. I roll my eyes and then anxiously slide my gaze over the stained, crudely simple table that centers the room. The dull gleam of the metal thermos and thimble cups arranged in a semicircle on top. Normally I'm offered tea at the beginning of interrogations, friend or foe. Everyone gets tea in Vietnam. But today, I'm offered none as the three-man judge and jury go at each other in Vietnamese. The one I call Frog Face because of his wide upper lip breaks off and looks sternly at me. Why do you keep moving in your seat? He asks. You know full well why I'm fidgeting, I answer. Remember what I said, Mr. Graham. If you are insolent, you will be punished. What do you call last night? I do not know what you're talking about, he says, and turns his attention back to the other two seated at the table. How can I not want to share at least a little of my pain? I want to jump up from my seat and ram my fist through his glasses. I sure don't want to be stingy at this moment. I want to give and give all that they had given me last night. But the pain I'm already suffering reminds me that this is only a smattering of possibilities they have to offer. I draw a trembled breath and sink deeper into my seat. This isn't supposed to be happening. The war has been over for more than 8 years, and I'm only a fresh out of high school photojournalist on his first big story. But yet, I'm feeling like I'm being set up, that this is just a warm-up for all that I had read about the experiences of American POWs during the war. This is an American flashback I don't want to experience. I let out a sigh and repeat what I've been telling them since my capture. I told you, I'm a photojournalist freelancing for the AP, Associated Press. Again, Mr. Graham, if you tell the truth, you will be taken to Hanoi. The world press will record your admission of spying, and then you will be released. If you continue lying, you will be taken out and shot, and no one will even know you are in Vietnam. Your country does not know you are here. Your family, no one. But I've been telling you for the last week that Frogface slaps the top of the table and yells, again, tell us why you are here and do not lie. They cinch this country up, and you're fucked. Get a copy of this book, prep yourself, because if you don't fight for your country, if you don't see what's really happening in this country, it's not a situation between Republican and Democrat. It's a situation between being American and free and taking back your country, because it's already been taken away from you. You don't have it anymore. It was gone in 2009. This whole thing about Trump being president, Trump didn't have an administration. He was infiltrated. He was heavily infiltrated. If you were as infiltrated and had no command, you might as well just freaking surrender right there because you got nothing. No other presidency ever throughout history in the United States has a president stayed in Washington, D.C. and created a shadow government down the street where all he had to do was have his little operators come down after work and fill him in on what was happening, and then they could strategize and create whatever tactics they were going to use for the next day, the next week. That's why you had Milli Vanilli, General Miley, I call him General Milli Vanilli, that frickin' traitor. One of the people needs to be frickin' hanging from a rope at the end of this shit. And it is shit. You need to really look at this. Because it looks like, oh, well, somebody else will take care of it. Nobody's going to take care of it. The question is how many they're going to put on the trains. How many they're going to move into whatever relocation program they've got. I know where I stand. I know where I've stood. I hope you people get squared away with what's happening. Go listen to Murray. He's more fiery than me. I like to just sit there and watch and wait. And I know when it's time to move. So I just look at my geese, look at my turkeys, my chickens, my pigs, and the leaves falling from the trees, the birch, the cottonwoods, and the larch. and observe at the same time taking very thoughtful actions as to what I do. For instance, prepping by giving my chickens basically a freaking palace to guarantee their safety for generations, so I don't have to worry about buying new chicks or getting new eggs from anybody. We've got everything we need. Got moose in the forest, got ducks in the sky, got cranes. Shoot, I had to take care of a lynx last night, try to get in. I got a pelt out of it, and I got the next best thing to pork chop. If you've ever tried lynx, got that in the freezer. So I don't have to worry about food, but there are a lot of people who are going to be starving because that's another part of their program. That's how they work that. Remember, it's all about creating chaos. But you people better start looking at what's happening, because a lot of people are just thinking this is just, quote, an election. And they're going to place her. They're going to place her. They did it already with Biden. They're going to do it again with Harris. And, hey, if you get a chance, go watch Candace's, what's Candace's last name? She's been the one who's been actually trying to research what the background is of Harris. I'm just like, if I thought Obama's was bad, oh my God. I got to watch the one that comes out today, because that's a pretty good one. I can just tell she's got that smile on her face. She must have found something really good, because it was already getting good with the idea that Harris is like, she basically has a picture with her with the black help and says that's her grandmother. Her grandmother. Yeah, back in Jamaica. Yeah, I bet you she... Man, see, this is the thing about Obama. Obama's not an American citizen. You know how I can tell you that? Because I was raised in Asia. And I know the requirements of going to public school in Asia. That's why I had to go to the American schools. I had to go to the American schools because if you went to the public schools in Asia, 9 times out of 10, you had to be a citizen, a national of that country. And I'll tell you flat out, Indonesia is one of those countries, and especially back in the 60s. So, unless he renewed his citizenship, he was an Indonesian when his mother married his stepfather, which is interesting because the stepfather was like a major anti-communist, but he was one of the agency's freaking operators in Indonesia back then in the 60s. Man, there's some sordid, weird stuff. But if you know about the agency has always been infiltrated by communists for years, for decades. That's why I never trusted anybody in the agency or State Department, because they were just packed full of commies. And this is during the war against the communists, the overt war against the communists that ended in the early 1990s, right? So, God bless you. Watch your 6.